I'm Kenneth Butler with Laptop Magazine, and this is Eric Geiler, the CEO of WiTricity. WiTricity is an alternative power charging solution, similar in vein a little bit to PowerMat and Qi, two other existing technologies, but it works very differently, and Eric's going to tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, thanks, Kenneth. So WiTricity, wireless electricity
Sure.
combined, WiTricity.
Right.
So you mentioned what are traditionally referred to as magnetic induction products.
Okay.
Much the same way the toothbrushes that you can buy in the store work that charge by magnetic induction. Most people don't know that, but they know that if they pull the toothbrush up out of the base, it stops working,
Okay.
which is the main limitation of magnetic induction. What WiTricity does is uses a technology called magnetic resonance, which is a way of using magnetic induction without doing magnetic induction, allows you to do electricity over very, very long distances compared to the sizes of the objects that you're trying to power.
Right. So the devices don't have to touch.
So the devices don't have to touch, and actually, as you'll see as we demonstrate this, here we are at the suite at, think of it as the room of the future.
Room of the future.
You're here at the room of the
Sounds
future
about
and
right.
show you a whole bunch of ways in which you could use this technology in ways that people probably haven't considered.
Sure.
So what I'd like to do is walk you through how the technology works. And is different than magnetic induction. So how magnetic resonance, or what we call highly resonant wireless power transfer, it's a big word, but let me show you how it works. So if we were to take, this is a source. By the way, FCC approved.
Okay.
So there are all kinds of questions people will ask about safety, interference, all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
But if you were to plug this in, so I've plugged it into a 5-volt USB line.
Okay.
And I'm just using a rechargeable USB style battery.
Okay.
You'll see that what it does, it lights up to tell you that it's on. It's creating a magnetic field around this coil that's behind here. So that round surface is a coil.
Okay.
And if I take a smaller coil, so they're not the same size, notice, and what you'll notice now is that that energy goes over distance. And if you actually sort of look at that, it works over quite a far distance. It's still actually on at that level, probably about a foot away. It works through things, by the way. So if I were to place it, for example, in furniture, see it's working
And it's
up
charging,
on the surface.
It's charging through the table right
Yeah,
now.
and it's actually not even charging because there's no battery in the light.
Okay.
It's actually powering
It's
it
just
directly,
powering.
but it's a good example to use. By the way, if I could, you sort of show it.
Go for it.
Notice we're going through Kenneth's head.
No cancer.
And it's basically completely safe. This is about 100 times safer than making a cell phone call.
I'm going to take your word on that.
It's about the same density as the Earth's magnetic field, because it's a magnetic field that we're using, about the same as the Earth. And also, it is about a millionth of an MRI machine. So if you've ever had an MRI, it's a millionth of an MRI,
Okay.
the same intensity as the Earth's magnetic field, and it's 100 times safer than using a cell phone.
Good to know.
So-
I'm glad. My mom will be happy about
There
that
you go.
when she sees
Now,
this.
another aspect of the technology is that it can power multiple devices simultaneously.
Right. Very
There are also different sizes, which is not something you can do with one of these inductive charging systems. You can't have it power multiple things. And the reason is the magnetic field is all around here.
Okay.
But it's not radiating out into space. It's basically, if you could see them, they'd look like lines that are closed circles. So we call it non-radiative is what it
Gotcha.
means. And then the other thing is, suppose that you want it to go further. So you'll see that it stops right about there, so about a foot away. Now, if you wanted to go further, you could make this bigger or make this bigger, but maybe you don't want to do that. So what you can do is create passive objects that will just allow the magnetic field to pass through it. And so now, see, you can go much further.
Oh, so it's extending, it's boosting the electricity coming from the
Yeah,
source.
it actually doesn't boost it, but it doesn't use it.
It doesn't use it. Oh, okay.
So there's electricity, and it is not electricity, it's a magnetic field.
Okay.
So it's electricity turned into a magnetic field, turned back into electricity when you're ready to use it.
Gotcha.
Now, if I could let you just sort of hold that there.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, it doesn't just stop there. If I were to place another repeater, I could go even further.
And does the distance between the repeaters matter? Apparently not.
A little bit if you go to extreme cases.
Gotcha.
But you'll see as we walk around the room of the future, this product actually is just showing what the technology can do.
Gotcha.
So let's look at some applications from the, you know, the sublime to the wild, if you will. Okay?
Excellent.
So let's start, you probably have seen these charging mats. You mentioned both of them, actually. This is one you can buy at the store where if you place it on the pad, you'll hear the beep, it'll start charging. But one thing you'll find with these, this is a traditional inductive system. You can't really move it off. If you move it off the slightest bit, it stops working. And that's one of the disadvantages of induction. Here's another inductive system if you place it like that. But if you move it, which means it would be quite difficult to put this in a car, for example.
Right.
So one thing that we have done is actually made them all compatible with each other. So that if you did actually have one of them, you could have a pad, but it gives you a lot of XY. So for example, if it was only capable of doing induction, you could place it on the device itself and it would charge. You could, if you put WiTricity and the induction into the systems, it would work both there in the center and it would work off to the side as well.
Very nice.
So
it's a little bit more flexibility.
So it gives you the ultimate flexibility XY.
Right.
This is more in the sublime department. Here are some cases though, this is quite a difficult problem to solve and couldn't be solved with anything other than magnetic resonance. So headphones, generally not a good idea to plug these things in while you're driving in your car to charge them. But if you put a small coil in it, and it's something around that size goes in there, imagine that this is your coffee mug holder, just with a little surface like that. And you plug into your cigarette lighter, and you'll notice, let's see if I, see how he's charging there, the little red light flashing? And you'll notice as you drive your car around, he's still flashing no matter where he sits. It would be very difficult to do that with one of these pads in your phone because the phone will bounce off, fall off the seat.
Under the car seat.
Yeah, and then the next thing you know, this at least would sit in there and charge continuously. So
Very cool.
let's look at a laptop application.
All right, perfect.
So let's suppose that here's our computer. Let's suppose that we put the source of the electricity into the computer, because there's electricity in there already because it's plugged in, right?
Right.
And we put the coil in the back of the phone. So one of those little thin coils is embedded in the back of the phone, and then when you place it next to the computer, it charges. This is something everyone can appreciate because you're thinking, my phone's dying, I get the electricity from the computer. Isn't that a great application?
Yeah, that sounds pretty awesome. I like to see that sooner rather than later.
Sooner rather than later. So tell your clients at laptop that it's time to do that.
Yeah, right.
Let's sort of go up the power curve. Television. Most people love these widescreen TVs. What do they not like? The power cords. You can probably even get the picture to come remotely, wireless HD and those sorts of things.
Sure.
But what if you could get rid of the power cord too? So this television set, the source of the electricity is just down here. The coil that powers the television set, and this is a regular television set,
Right.
is essentially powered from this coil here. So think of it as a larger version of the thing that I just showed you. And if I turn it on, what you'll see is it'll turn the television set on, and you're looking at something that's working at probably, 120 watts, something on that order.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's no picture, so we'll have to see if we can find something available for us to look at. There we go. But you can see this is a fairly powerful,
Yeah, that's...
large-scale electronic device. By the way, one other thing that you could do with that, if you thought about those lights, notice how this light's working all the way over here? Why? Because it's running from the television set through the repeater all the way across here, all the way over to here.
That's amazing.
So you imagine you could sit in your chair watching television set while your cell phone charges in your pocket.
Or you could have one coil in the room. And
one coil in the room.
Repeaters lined out around, charging everything. It's pretty cool. That brings me to a question. Is there a sort of maximum amount of power that can be conducted through the coils? Or is there a gadget that couldn't be charged?
So at WiTricity, the largest thing we're currently doing are electric cars.
Okay.
Those charge at 3,000 watts. You drive them into your garage, and they're powered and they're charged wirelessly.
Right.
So what comes after that, that's pretty powerful. You could probably eventually do your own house.
Right,
Do
yeah.
the whole thing. We'll start a little more modestly. Imagine that your keyboard no longer has batteries in it.
Okay.
Your lamp doesn't have a power cord, and your cell phone, as you know, has a coil. And let's assume that you power your desktop. And you'll see the cell phone just hopped on, the light's going, and if you looked really closely, you'd see the keyboard battery light is on, saying that it's getting direct power.
All right, so it's charging everything on the desk, pretty much.
Now, let's walk a little further into the room of the future. So if you remember the repeater concept, the idea that you could hop through, let's take that a little bit to your question of an extreme.
Okay.
Right? How far can you take this? So here on the floor is a source of electricity. The coil is that big. And in these carpet tiles that are just randomly placed here is a coil that you could imagine embedding this into the carpet.
Okay.
So you lay your carpet here down. You'll notice the floor lamps that are there have no power cords going to them. The furniture itself, there's actually a coil underneath the table, and there's one on the back of the tablet.
Okay.
And if I turn this on, and I'll just plug it into a battery here for ease of view's sake. Look at the lights in the room came on, and now the tablet's charging over there on the table.
Now the coils are in the carpeting and the table.
Right, but there's no installation other than just laying the carpeting down.
Right.
And the source itself actually comes from here.
Right.
And so you'll see when I do that, it turns everything off. So that tiny little coil that big is able to power an entire room.
That's great. It's very cool stuff.
So that's areas of sort of your house. Finally, let's look at sort of one of the things that we know all of us consume a lot of, AA batteries. The world consumes around 40 billion of these a year. They're very expensive in terms of their overall cost to provide power. It's on the order, for those of you that sort of look at this, it's about $300 a kilowatt hour to supply power from a disposable battery. The average electric bill in the US from the grid is about 10 cents. So a typical disposable AA battery is 3,000 times more expensive to provide power from than the grid. And there have been rechargeable batteries available for years. Consumers typically don't like them, and they don't like them for one big reason. They actually cost a little bit more, but in the long run, they're a lot cheaper. And the reason that they're popular, or not as popular, is that you have to take the battery out to charge it. So people don't like that from a convenience standpoint. So imagine if you could, and this is the first wireless AA battery. You'll see there's a little circuit on the top here.
All right.
Inside here is the equivalent of a AAA rechargeable battery and a resonator or coil structure that's in there. And if you were to imagine that you'd have a charging bucket at home, so there's a Wii controller and a camera with the WiTricity batteries just inside the device, and you'll see when I turn it on, see how all the lights light up inside the game controller? It's because these little guys are lighting up inside the device, so you would never need to take out the battery ever again. Just throw it in the bucket, the stuff's charged and ready to go. And it's a lot better for the environment, and it's cheaper. It's probably one of the first green applications that's actually more cost effective. Because you don't find green things that are cheaper usually, and this is, I think, a very good example of that.
Wow, very cool stuff. Well, Eric, thank you so much for giving us that tour through the WiTricity home of tomorrow. I'm Kenneth Butler with Laptop Magazine. That's all, folks.
Thank you.